So, welcome everyone to another episode of The Creative Minds. Joining me here is Ramy Al Kadhi. So, can you tell us a bit more about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So thank you for having me, Aida, and having me on your show. So my name is Ramy Al Kadhi. I'm 32, British Iraqi, born in London. Currently, what I do is I head up the sales department at Ramy, which is the music streaming service in the region. For those who don't know, that's the first Arab tech company to also list on the Nasdaq. So I head up the commercial department, which means the advertising sales department. And then on the side as well, I have various different things going on, but one of them is writing mainly, actually, give, publishing publishing articles, but most recently a novel, actually, which got published from a publisher in London that came out on September 29th.
How did you end up being in London and now you're in Dubai and now you're the head of Anghami? So, can you walk us through your journey? Like, what did you study in your undergrad and your experiences as well?
Yeah, sure. So I don't know if it's particularly natural steps that got me there, but I was born in London. And then around 3 years old, moved to Bahrain for a bit with my dad's, got a job there, and then came back to London when I was 11 and spent my adolescent years in London. So from 11 to 21 in London, and I went to university in England as well, at Bristol University, where I studied economics.
Mm.
And then around when I graduated, we were in the middle of back then, which is called the credit crisis, which was a recession post Lehman Brothers collapsing. So I remember I was in London, and the job market wasn't super ideal. So I decided, my dad said, look, Dubai is happening. Come,
Mm.
I'm there at the moment. So I went, and then I started my career in media, which I started in the media agency world. So digital media with Omnicom Media Group, quite a large known media group. I did that for 5 years,
Mm.
and after that, I decided to do my own thing. So I set up a tech company, a calendar tech business that raised some funding, like $150,000, and from there did that. Didn't work. So at 27, I was pretty much again starting again,
Mm.
broke, all of that stuff,
Yeah.
and went to Berlin, actually, for 2 to 3 months, just consulting, figuring out the next thing. And then, funnily enough, I ended up joining the nightlife world in Dubai.
Yeah.
I was in touch with someone, and they said, "Look, Blue Marlin, which is one of the was one of the biggest beach clubs in the UAE." He said, "Look, can you help me do some brand management for Blue Marlin?" I'm like, "Well, that's not really my thing, but
Mm.
I don't know what my thing is right now, so let me just do that." And then from there, I got lucky. I think I met an investor in Rami. We were just
Yeah.
having a coffee, a gentleman named Walid Mansour, who runs MEVP, which is a VC. And I said to him, "Oh, so I'd love a job with you, Walid." And he said,
Yeah.
"You are a terrible fit for venture capital
Yeah.
because you have no finance background." And I was like, "Good point.
Yeah.
Okay, out of all the companies that you invested in, which one would you say is a good company
Mm.
to join?" And he goes, "Well, I invested in a company called Ramy. Have you heard of them?" I'm like, "Yeah, I have heard of them." Uh, and I said, "Okay." So then I messaged someone I knew at Ramy, said, "Is there anything?" And he goes, "There might be a sales role, a
Mm.
media sales role." And I was like, "Never done that before." Okay. And I messaged someone, said, "Can I interview?" I went through the interview process sort of 3.5 years ago. As a media manager, I got the job,
Mhm.
and I just went for it.
Nice.
I took the role, and I said, "Let me treat this like my own
Mm.
startup." You mentioned Eli Habib. I'm sure you maybe if you met him.
Mm.
Um, I think he valued that. He likes people who come in and are entrepreneurial within the organization. And I found a company that I liked in a
Mhm.
space that I liked, and I was like, well, sales is even if you've never done it before,
Mm.
you're always selling anyway every day.
Yeah.
You're whether it's yourself, whether it's this podcast, whether it's sort of your book, whatever. I was like, I can do sales, and
Mm.
next thing you know, I got there. So it was just a mix of the right timing, and then
Mm.
once finding the right thing, just grabbing it and going
Mm.
for it, basically.
Mm. And how did you know it was the right thing for you?
How did I know it was the right thing for me? I think it was the mindset of the founders.
Mm.
To be honest, I'm not a great employee in a very rigid
Yeah.
system, because I'm
Mm.
like, okay, layers, rules. Don't get me wrong, there is structure and layers and rules, but
Mm.
I was able to just come up with stuff. And like today I was on
Mm.
Smashy Business,
Yeah.
um, in the morning, discussing in Ramy Studios, which is basically a department that a guy called Camille, who's our head of production, and myself started during COVID, building songs for brands as a new solution. And here we are today. It's a multi-million revenue source of the business.
Mm.
You're able to sort of just, I say I have an idea, okay, meet the product team, build it,
Mm.
sell it. So I like that they didn't really care about, okay, what's your title,
Mm.
what's your age. Just show results and an
Mm.
entrepreneurial spirit, and you can fly with
Okay.
this company.
Mm.
And that's what attracted me.
Mm. So you didn't have previous. So when you joined Anghami, you didn't have previous background in the area that you were in. So how did you manage to get through the interview process, and as well perform in a way that is you're creating results for the company, right?
Well, I had some media experience. So I was
Mm.
on the agency side, pitching ideas that, for example, an Anghami would have come to me and said, "Can you sell this to a
Mm.
client?" So in the media world, you are selling, but you're selling media plans to your clients. So I understood media, how to build media
Mm.
plans, how advertisers buy media.
Mm.
But you know, I just think it's a bit of a new world now, where age and these things aren't as important. And I just went for it. I mean,
Mm.
I put my head down. I studied a lot what I'm selling, and then I was
Mm.
like, well, whether it's Anrami, whether it's Rubik's cube, whether it's
Mm.
whatever, the same principles actually apply.
Mm.
Work hard, look for a solution that makes the end customer happy,
Mm.
scale it. And I just found the rhythm within the
Mm.
company, basically. And
Mm.
I think trying not to be too intimidated, to be honest. When I did the interview process,
Mm.
I don't think it was the best interview process. I think I remember in my final interview, they asked me to do a presentation. And
Mm.
instead, what I did was I built a website
Yeah.
explaining my answer to the pitch. It was a terrible website. It was the solutions I offered were ridiculous.
Mm.
But I think they probably just thought, well, the way Rami approached it showed
Mm.
some entrepreneurial thing. Once he learns the business, which might take 3 or 6 months,
Mm.
he can apply that sort of mindset and thinking.
Okay. Okay, makes sense. So that's kind of moving towards your experience in Anghami. But then you also mentioned during COVID, you ended up writing a novel. And I honestly came across your name on LinkedIn when you were talking about the novel. I was like, interesting. I want to learn more about this novel. Where can I buy this novel? Then I reached out to you, and then I'm so grateful for you for sending it over. So thank you for that. I've been reading through it halfway through it actually now, and as I mentioned earlier on, it was very interesting to see a perspective coming, a perspective of facts about relationship, career choices, being confused, but from a male perspective, as opposed to
Hmm.
always being a female perspective. So I really like that. And there was things that I kind of touched base on and I liked that you talked about, where first of all, before we touch base on that, was this a real experience? What part of at least what you were talking about real was that? Yeah.
Certainly, many aspects to it. I think one of the sort of society, I like to call it sort of a generational or societal problem that's happening right now,
Mm.
especially with young males. I feel that young males today they feel that pressure of always wanting to achieve. You know how it is, especially in the Arab world. Do well, get a job, get married, get a relationship, and I know what that feels like. And
Mm,
then I had many experiences that happened that I couldn't really relate to. They just happened. So while I was in COVID, I was locked down, and after a work day, it was just me and my laptop. Um, I was like, well, maybe a good way for me to understand the things that I was facing was to write about it in a
mm,
fictional in a fictional way. So I took myself, created
mm,
an alter ego
mm,
of the character whose name is Ray, which is what the name of the novel is,
mm.
and I placed myself in situations that were fiction, if that makes sense.
Okay. Okay.
Um, and and then by writing it, I was like, well, how would I navigate that fictional
Mm,
that fictional landscape
mm,
to understand myself better, if
mm,
that made sense. I'm like, okay,
mm,
let me, for example, taking the character Ray and throwing him in a situation where he tries to make an art exhibition
yeah.
with famous tattooed street artists.
Mm,
There's elements of that I've done, but not all of that. And saying, okay, so how would he react? And that allowed me to understand myself better. But then by doing it as a fiction,
mm,
I wanted it to be more adaptable for people like yourself or for other people to understand the young male psyche more, because
mm,
in a non-fictional circumstance,
mm,
it's sometimes very matter of fact. Okay,
mm.
this is anxiety, this is that. Where I was like, I'm not going to talk about those things. I'm
Okay.
just going to write the story, and you're going
Yeah.
to feel those things.
Can you elaborate more on the process itself? Did you just decide, okay, I want to write this novel from the beginning and just were committed every single day to write? How was the flow of the novel? How did you end up editing it? And how long did the whole process take for you to from start to end?
Yeah, well, I mean, so it's not like the movies whereby you have a typewriter and there's a music behind you and the words are flowing. It's actually a very tough experience. I mean, it's a long,
Mm,
long thing to do. I remember I was, I think, in Denmark on a
mm,
holiday, and the idea started coming to my mind about doing this novel,
mm,
and then I wrote the first chapter and
mm,
slept on it for like 6 months. I just wrote the first chapter, and then I kept re-looking at the first chapter again and again, and then COVID happened.
mm,
Um, and probably during the first 3 months of that
mm.
pandemic, I only wrote the first three chapters
Mm.
and kept rewriting them. And I wrote them in third person
Okay.
initially,
Yeah.
and I was like, something is so off here.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine called Selma, who's a massive reader, I said to her, "Look, I'm doing this thing. Do you mind reading it
Mm,
for me?"
mm,
And she said, "Yeah, all right." Um, and she did. And she
mm,
said, "I think this should be first person."
mm,
I was like, "That makes sense." So I rewrote the first three chapters in first person, sent them to her,
mm,
and she's like, it reads well now.
mm.
Can you Are you going to finish this thing?"
Yeah.
I was like, "Yeah, I will." But she helped me. So when writing, there's a thing called an accountability partner. I read
Okay.
about this somewhere, where it's good to have one person who's like not super close as a friend,
Mm,
but because so you can get the criticism and not sort of
mm,
feel offended, or they would feel weird giving you criticism, but you respect their opinion enough.
mm,
And then she started giving me sort of deadlines on chapters and said, I wanted to see chapter on this date, on that date. And then the first 10 chapters probably took me 4 to 5 months. And then the other 20 chapters just took me 2, 3 months, because
mm,
there's a moment in the writing process where you actually establish your writing style. You're like, that's how I write. Okay, it's
Interesting.
not super descriptive. It's more short sentences. Okay,
Mm,
this is how I'm gonna write. And then
mm,
as I was writing, and I got to know the characters I was writing better, the ending and the plot became clear to me. And then I was like, this is how the
mm,
book is gonna go. And then I just started writing it.
mm,
Once I finished writing it and I sent it to her, she
mm,
said, "Yep, I think it's good." I
mm,
was like, "Okay, I have a couple options here. I can
Mhm.
self-publish it,
Yeah.
which is what I wanted to avoid actually,
Mm.
because of the cost and because of I wanted the stamp of a publisher.
Isn't self-publishing though cheaper? I guess.
Well, it is and it isn't, because when you
Mm.
self-publish, you actually have to get an artist to do the design for you. You have to
Mm.
pay for a lot of the editing. You have to do it yourself, actually,
Mm.
which sometimes you have to hire an editor.
Mm.
The reason I wanted a publisher, and I
Mm.
sent it to probably 100 publishers,
Mm.
50-50 didn't reply,
Oh.
49 said no, and one publisher called Olympia
Yeah.
Publishers, who are a boutique publisher in London, said, "We like it.
Mm.
Let's go for it." And they sent me the contract that
Yeah.
day, which the reason I went for that is the cost is not assumed by the writer. The cost is assumed
Mm.
by the publisher. The
Mm.
publisher prints, markets, does everything,
Mm.
and then does the editing process with you. And
Mm.
I did a year of editing with them. I mean, it's a 70,000 word novel. The first iteration I got back of it had 12,000 comments.
Wow. Oh.
You know, this grammar, or this sentence is unclear, or are you sure about using a hyphen here, or
Mm.
this character doesn't seem very well developed at this point of the story. So they put a
Mm.
professional with you, and that goes back probably 5 to 6 times.
Mm.
So that was actually longer than the writing.
Wow. Yeah. And when you were building it, you mentioned earlier on that you were writing this because you were trying to get clarity for yourself. Do you feel that after writing it, you got the clarity that you're looking for?
Probably not. Uh, um, look, yes and no. I think
Mm.
that it's funny because the book's out now,
Mm.
2 years after I wrote it.
Mm.
So I've kind of put that person behind, if that makes sense.
Mm.
I wrote him out of my system in a
Mm.
way, um, and people are now sending me comments on how I was,
Yeah.
which is kind of weird because I identify less with the
Mm.
character that I wrote. Um, but upon writing it, new self-discovery things are
Mm.
coming up, and I'll probably have to write something else
Yeah. So
in order to do that.
are you planning on continuing with writing in general? Not just blogs, but actually writing books.
Well, I'm happy. So I don't classify myself really as an author. To be honest, I think there's some
Okay.
people that are like, okay, like I'm an author, or I'm a this.
Mm.
I'm just someone who wrote a book, and I
Mm.
trust me. You can do one. Many people. It
Mhm.
is very achievable to do
Mm.
if you put in the work.
Mm.
But I know I can do that now. I know I can. I know I can
Mm.
write. But at that time, I did the thirst. The itch was there
Mm.
to discuss these topics with myself.
Mm.
I'm I am flirting with another book at the moment, an
Mm.
idea, but
Mm.
based on a totally different character. Something I'm thinking about sort of doing at like a 6'3" English guy called Bob,
Mhm.
who is the most standard type of person you meet, non-controversial, polite, leads a very normal life,
Mm.
but then throwing him into like circumstances of
Mm.
making $1 billion company and like becoming famous.
Mm.
I'm flirting with that idea.
Yeah.
It's something I'm cooking because I think it'd be cool.
Mm.
Because I think another thing that I'm trying to explore is how we relate to people of status.
Mm.
A lot of the time
Mm.
we think, oh my god, that person is a
Yes.
superhero, or they're not
Mhm.
from here, but they're just like any other person. So I want to take any other person and throw him
Mm.
into fame, fortune,
Mm.
the high life, and kind of see where that goes. Actually,
Mm. 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 So, what would you say were the challenges that you faced when writing the book? Or I would say, were you ever in a place where you would have an idea, write it that? Because I kind of felt when you said I did chapter one and then did chapter two, then chapter three, it was easy and the flow was natural and you knew what chapter was going up there. I was just thinking when you would write a book, would it be just like an idea here, an idea there, and things are just all over the place, and then you had to gather them together in terms of chapter and flow and structure, or was it not the case for you?
I think that probably, I mean, I know some other writers
Mm,
who, and the funny thing is when when I speak to them,
mm,
everyone has a different flow and a different process. For me,
mm,
the process was simply the writing, in the sense that writing requires you putting the laptop every day
mm,
and just producing
mm,
sentences. That for me was the hardest bit. I can't. I'm quite a distracted individual sometimes,
mm,
and I'm like, God, like I don't feel like doing it
mm,
tonight. I'd rather just chill and watch Netflix or meet a
mm,
friend. Um, so that was the ultimate challenge, to
mm,
sit and be like, no, I'm gonna write. And then the second challenge is like you write, you're like, what a load of rubbish did I just write? This is bad. This is bad writing, like, and I reread it. I'm like, this is horrific.
mm,
Um, and then you're like, okay, I'm not a good writer.
mm,
Why?
mm,
Why am I doing this? The flow and structure was less difficult for me
okay.
because I drew on personal experiences,
Mm,
and I I didn't. I mean, I know you're reading it, so I'm not going to ruin
mm,
it. But I didn't try and make a climactic story.
mm,
It's not a guy wakes up and then meets dragons and
mm, mm.
eventually becomes a superhero. It's
Yeah.
a guy in everyday life,
Mm,
you know, and you're more hearing his mind and how he perceives it. So I
mm,
didn't find the story
mm.
the most difficult bit, actually.
Okay, okay, okay. So you talked a lot, I mean, at least you touched base on certain parts when you talked about you're a dreamer and then you talked about the flow state. Was that a phase that you're trying to figure out what it means to you? I mean, what did you figure out from those?
Well, I think it was just a case of finding a way to be consistent around something.
Mm,
It's easy to get caught up and say, I want to do this with my life, and I want to do that
mm,
with my life, and tomorrow at work I need to nail this, and
mm,
I need to do this with my relationships, or I need to hang out with this friend,
mm,
and tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. And I am a dreamer. I mean, I even at work at Ramy, it's very much like, no, we can
mm,
go here. Let's build towards here. But
mm,
the writing helped me just focus right now
mm,
on the words. And there was probably in the whole writing period a
mm,
month of like euphoric writing. Like
mm,
you're just work finishes, pour yourself a cup of tea, put the music on,
mm,
and just go, and you're not really thinking about anything. And then you'll produce a sentence and you'll be like, that's a very good sentence. i'm
mm,
happy about I'm
mm,
happy about that sentence. And you get that like buzz and adrenaline. And actually, since writing, I kind of do miss that, to be honest. Like the first sentence of the book,
mm.
I sat impatiently waiting for something to happen. I'm not sure what that something was, though.
Yeah,
When I wrote that, I was like, I think that's a very
yeah.
poignant feeling that everyone goes through every day.
Mm,
But it kind of just sort of came out.
mm,
Then I looked at it and I'm like, I feel good about that. And then
mm,
every you know every
mm.
X hundred of words, you produce a line,
Yeah.
and you're like, I like that line.
There was one that you wrote, which has, I think that was more about the flow and dreamer. It was like, I'm a dreamer and have multiple stories to tune into. It's such a common occurrence that my brain feels like a TV without an off button. I felt that
Yeah,
was like, damn, like it's actually what's going on like now in so many of our lives. Like there's no off button. It's just like constant on. Like when does this end, you know? So I really, really enjoyed this. You're using big words there, like flow, enlightenment. Can you elaborate on what you believe those mean or what they are to you?
well, I don't think I'm a very enlightened guy. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think that. I mean, any sort of a high achievement
Mm,
person that I've ever met is actually, and Eli Habib tells me about this all the time. Like,
mm,
we chief paranoia officers.
mm,
That's what we call like he likes to call it,
yeah.
whereby sort of you don't ever sit and I'm like, okay, I'm an enlightened one because I wrote a book, or I built
Mm,
this, or I did that. I don't think I've
mm,
ever had that feeling, to be
mm,
honest. I feel that I'm just always on the search to actually create something,
mm,
whether it's at work, whether that's in my writing,
mm,
whether that's in my personal experiences with people. And, you know, following those things that give me that buzz, you know.
Mm,
So maybe it's not a good state to be, because um, I'm very restless until I achieve something very massive.
mm,
Then I'm very restless again. During the writing period,
mm,
I did forget about all that, and like the buzz was just the day
mm,
to day
mm,
writing and not thinking, okay, I hope this is a million copy bestseller, you know,
mm.
or I hope, you know, millions of people buy this book. That thought never occurred to me. I was just
Interesting.
happy to
Yeah.
do the writing. That for me is kind of
Mm,
what I'm searching for since I
mm.
wrote the book.
Like, did you find something else that gives you this constant feeling of at peace and enjoying the process more than the desire to reach the goal?
Since
Yeah.
writing the book, the only thing would probably be martial arts,
Mm,
which I practice quite often. I find
mm,
myself in a flow state, the mix of sort of the power of the martial
mm,
arts, where you experience a lot of strength in what
mm,
you're able to achieve, but also the presence, because you know when you're fighting,
yeah.
you can't be wandering off
Mm,
thinking about your electricity bill. You know, you have to
mm,
sort of be in the ring, hands up.
mm,
It's also quite beautiful the way you express yourself
mm,
in martial arts and the
mm,
defending movements and the punching. So in physical activity, I do
mm,
get those, but in terms of projects, I mean, and
mm,
Ramy gives me a lot of satisfaction. But
mm.
on a personal level, probably since writing, no.
So, what is it that you're chasing after now? Like, what is the main goal that you're going after and that you feel like once you achieve, it's going to give you this internal happiness?
Getting rid of that mindset, basically.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, you know, I'm very lucky. I had a great family growing up, great parents. They didn't struggle too much.
Mm,
They gave me the best education, the best
mm,
ability to go and chase a career. When I was
mm,
down and out, they always supported me.
mm,
And touch wood, you know, I've been able to, at a relatively young age, do well at work
mm,
and get out the novel and things and all
mm,
these things. But all that has taught me that that is not
mm,
what creates that ultimate happiness for me. It creates accomplished feeling, like
mm,
accomplished moments,
mm,
but I'm not at peace, if that makes sense. So
mm,
I'm
mm.
actually trying to find a way to just have more relaxed and calm mornings.
Have you ever been into meditation or journaling?
I mean, look, I've done things even bigger than that, in a sense
Mm,
that, like, you know, every, I don't know if you've heard of Burning Man.
mm,
So there's mini burns that happen,
mm,
and you know, I run a Burning Man project with three friends where we actually build from scratch an infrastructure
mm,
once a year that hosts workshops and events around all of these things that you're mentioning and
mm,
more.
mm.
Stargazing workshop, all these
Yeah.
things. And I've been around it and I've done it. My sort of, the thing that I'm wary of is the like virtue sort of signaling piece of, you know,
Mm,
positive thoughts only and manifest this and whatever.
mm,
I've never found that so rooted in that much realism. I have a lot of friends
mm,
who practice that, and when I'm
mm.
out, down and out, they're like, "No, just like sit and manifest." I'm like, "Yo, I
Mm.
have things to do. I need to.
Yeah.
I gotta put a plan, and
Yeah.
I gotta solve this and put money in the bank. Okay,
Mm,
cool. Like, you know."
yeah.
So I'm not 100%
Mm,
into a lot of that culture that's coming in of
mm,
like, just do those
yeah.
wellness things and things will go good. But certainly
Mm,
taking care of the body and mind, especially in the morning, is
mm,
something I'm very bad at.
mm,
I wake up and I just get to work,
mm.
which is bad.
There's a lot of people who talk about the fact that how you start your day is how you kind of have how your day kind of manifests. And I personally would agree with that. I just feel when you start your day more at peace and I mean not saying peace, but things that you do that calm you down or get you grounded and ready for the day really dictates how the whole day goes. And if you start off with a negative mindset and a lot of conversations were going around, even the music that you play really plays a huge part in your subconscious mind and how you behave and how you do things, which I found is very interesting. But I do believe like early in the morning that if you're able to find something that can ground you, it can really help start the day. Whether, for example, if you're into fitness, so maybe something like working out, and I don't know if you do so, but working out in the morning can really, for example, feel that you've accomplished something in a sense where you accomplished something for your own well-being. That gives you a boost and affects creativity.
I agree. I mean, if you read the in the book, you'll see that the character doesn't start his days in the most
Oh yeah.
optimal way. And like today, I think I woke up and I just like picked my phone up and I just scrolled up through the emails, and that's it. I was in. I
Mm,
was in the matrix already.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, and certainly, it's something that I
Mm,
would like to focus on
mm,
more, like owning the morning
mm,
piece, like the
mm,
morning piece of the day, like
mm,
before any work, before you
mm,
contact anyone, before you do anything,
mm.
maybe going for a jog or going for a
Yeah.
drive, even,
Yeah.
whatever it is. I'm not good at that.
Mm,
That I can tell you,
mm.
and that's something I would like to
Mm,
focus on.
awesome. So I don't want to take more of your time, but I ask you the following question, and it's what is your definition of success? So what is it? What does success mean for you?
What does success mean for me? Don't really know the answer to that one. I think it would probably be along the lines, especially now I passed my 30s a couple of years ago. I'm realizing, you know, honestly, I have friends who are actors, millionaires, multimillionaires, all that stuff,
Mm,
and many of them are unhappy. So I
mm,
know for sure that it's not power and money. I know that
mm,
for sure. Like
mm,
that's a million percent. I know that now
mm,
because from certain personal experience and knowing quite a few famous people, especially when I grew back in London. There was a very popular show
mm,
called Skins, which
mm.
was like a massive show, and one of my very good friends was like the lead on the show, and
Yeah.
I remember she was like struggling a lot. So I know it's not those things.
Mm,
It's good to know that. But the
mhm,
more I grow older, it's honestly things like having a good group of friends
mm,
and having good, meaningful connections
mm,
with people. That's actually what I think the
mm,
biggest definition. Like, my friend Linda always calls me and says, when we talk about this topic, she goes,
mm,
if it's a random Tuesday night
mm,
and you have nothing to do, could you make a board game plan with three people and just chill
mm,
and have a good time? And
mm.
that for me is a good definition of
Oh,
success, actually.
so could you?
Me, so yes and no. So some currently no,
Mm,
because of ridiculous work ethic and
mm,
hours and just shutting myself off a little bit
mm,
from that. But I'm reworking on that
mm.
piece.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Rami. And for people to connect with you, where should they connect with you, and where can they find your book as well?
Yeah, so they can just connect me on Instagram. So at Ramy Ramy underscore Al Kadhi Alkadhi, and the link to the book is in my bio, but it's available on multiple outlets: Amazon, WH Smith, Barnes and Noble. I think more bookstores are now taking it. So
Mm,
if you actually just search
mm.
Ramy Al Kadhi on Amazon, it will pop up actually. So
Okay, perfect. Thank you again so much for your time. And for everyone listening, I hope you all have an amazing, awesome rest of your day.